It's like you're a brother from another mother and another father.
Pretty much, yeah.
What's up, Throttlers? Aristotle Full Throttle here, and I have a very special guest with me, Koricon and I. I was just actually on his show, and we were talking about Solo, because Solo comes out in May, and we're all trying to figure out whether or not that's going to be good, because there's been a lot of tumult in the making of that movie. They fired the directors, they had an acting coach on set, they reshot half the movie, or 90% of the movie. It's insane. We did that show, and it's on Koricon's channel, so check that out. I'll put a link to that in the description below. So Koricon, what are your feelings on the state of Lucasfilm in general? Where have we been, where are we now, and where are we going? That's what we're talking about today.
I think that we are experiencing the Disney learning curve.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
we have a lot of things that worked very well, like Star Wars Rebels worked very well. I loved that show, and a lot of that is because the people from the Clone Wars were retained and they were pretty much left alone. With The Force Awakens, the problem they had was they just spent $5 billion to acquire Star Wars, and so they had to play it safe with the movie. They couldn't go too different and lose the audience, but at the end they needed to retain the old fans while trying to retain the prequel fans, while trying to gain the younger people that hadn't seen any of them.
And from a business standpoint, they want to recoup that investment, so they want to make sure that they're doing it.
And so there was a lot of things that they had to do in that one movie. So, you know, a lot of people complained that The Force Awakens was a rehash of Episode 4. I like to argue against that. I agree there's a lot of things that are similar, but they had to do that because you're trying to fight against the prequels and bring everybody back to the feeling of the originals.
Yeah, and that was an uphill battle for sure.
Yeah,
for a lot of people, because a lot of like casual fans maybe would just be like, I saw those prequels, I didn't like them, and it's like they're not willing to give it another chance necessarily.
So they had to put their own stamp on it, which they did visually. They had a lot of visual stamp. You had new characters that were being introduced. You have expanded story. But yes, there is a Death Star. Yes, it does get blown up. Yes, there are a lot of similarities between Rey and Luke. I agree with that, but I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's something that they felt they needed to do to move in the right direction. Like, you have to start somewhere familiar and then move off of that. You can't just leap off the cliff and hope to make it a hit.
Yeah, and I think J.J. Abrams in particular is kind of the right guy to do that always, which kind of worries me about Episode 9, by the way. But he did that with Star Trek. He brought like a familiarity back. He satisfied fans by keeping it. He didn't reboot it entirely. He kept, there's like a time loop. So obviously everything that we've ever loved about Star Trek actually happened. Now we just kind of went back and we're starting a parallel universe.
Right.
Which is cool. So you can still retain all of the canon from Star Trek.
Now that is one thing that Star Wars lost.
Right.
Was the canon. Except for the films, obviously. But I mean the extended stuff, like the books and the comics and all of that. I know personally one of my best friends hasn't watched any of the new movies because he refuses to, because they dropped the canon.
Oh, wow. That's a bold statement, because in my opinion, and I kind of go by what George Lucas intended always, which he always intended Star Wars to be a film and a film series. So for me, the books and the comic books were always like fun material, but in my mind, I always treated them as non-canon, even though they were officially a part of Lucas Enterprises. I don't know. I know there was like 4 main companies. There's the gaming, the movies, special effects, but I always like thought those were good. But in my mind, the films were always the Bible of Star Wars. Like, if the movie came out, that's what I adhered to. So for your friend, I don't know. Like, I think
he
should maybe
he gets kind of emotional. Like, once he makes his mind up, that's it. Period. Like there's no convincing him otherwise unless he comes to it on his own. So I just let it be. But
yeah, I have a friend like that. I have friends like that for sure. Like I remember when I went and saw, well, it's my cousin actually. We saw episode 1 together, and we were like confused. And then we saw episode 2, and going into episode 2, he said, "If this movie sucks, I'm never watching episode 3." So obviously, episode 2 is the worst Star Wars movie, and I'll always say that for a lot of reasons. He's just never seen episode 3. He just never will. And I'm like, just watch the last 40 minutes. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do it. So, but yeah, I mean, there is a possibility of missing out on that. And like, so going back to Force Awakens, J.J. Abrams successfully, I think, got a lot of new people on board, retained the people that were going to come anyway, and sort of satisfied them. I mean, the Rotten Tomatoes score is like 94% critics, 93% fans for that movie.
Well, and what they were really trying to do was just minimize their losses instead of maximize their gains. Like you had to look at it as like a stock market in a way. They were trying to minimize the amount of fans that they would lose by the movie. They were not trying to gain new fans.
Yeah.
So that's why they played it safe.
And I think, in my opinion, it's a fun movie. It's a fun adventure.
I love it.
Yeah. And I can watch it every time it's on. That's the thing about J.J. Abrams.
He got it right there.
It's a fun movie, and I enjoy it, and I think it successfully delivered on the feeling of Star Wars and moved things forward appropriately. And then we had Rogue One, which now was like Lucasfilm trying to go, all right, so what we're going to do is these spin-off movies, these in-between movies. It's kind of like episode 3.5, right in the middle
more
of...
More like 3.9.
9, yeah. It's like 3.98 because it's moments before episode 4.
Literally the next scene is episode 4.
Yeah, which to me, that movie, I've come to enjoy it more. The first time I saw it, I was like, it's okay. It felt like, though, a lot of rehashing of playing in the sandbox of Star Wars, and it's almost like we have all these fun characters now. And this fun world to play in. Let's just play around in it instead of sort of expanding outside the sandbox. But I do think, in my opinion, it elevates episode 4, even though it doesn't seem like that movie can get much better. It really does a good job of just making episode 4 that much cooler.
Well, I would say it complements 4. So it doesn't take anything away from 4, and I wouldn't say that 4 seems any better to me, but it's a nice compliment, that I could watch it before episode 4 and it works.
It makes me want to watch episode 4 immediately following it.
Yeah, I did. So, as soon as I got home from seeing Rogue One, I watched episode 4 because I felt like I needed to continue the movie.
Yeah. For me, I think the one thing that it does that specifically to elevate episode 4 is the fact that it takes care of that little tiny plot hole that no one really cared about. But it's like, why is there an exhaust port that you can just shoot 2 missiles in and destroy an entire moon-sized base? And now we know. And now it makes Star Wars a perfect movie. So it went from like slightly flawed to perfect. So that's that for me.
And you could argue that when the movie came out, they didn't know that a parsec was distance and not speed.
Exactly. So I'm interested in seeing how Han Solo handles doing the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs, actually, because...
From what I understand, a lot of theories that I've heard, and I don't think any of it is canon, or at least it might have been in the old canon, but that the Kessel Run is a way of avoiding capture from the Empire or whoever else is chasing you by moving close to, I think it's a black hole. Like you're
cool.
So you're kind of using the gravity of it to slingshot you around the black hole or a star of something.
So the closer you get to the black hole, the more dangerous
it is. The faster you go. Exactly. Faster. So they measure how far from the black hole you went around, because the closer you are, the faster you go.
Right.
So if you're doing 12 parsecs, no one else has dared to get that close to a black hole and survive.
I like that a lot of these spin-off movies are going to try to take care of all of the slight plot holes.
It's like
they're making entire movies.
It's like all of these anthology movies so far have just been ways of explaining plot holes from the original trilogy. So what are they going to do for the next one? Are they going to explain Ewoks? I don't know.
Yeah, they'll probably be like, short for a stormtrooper, they'll be like, stormtroopers are supposed to be 6'2", all of them, and this is why.
Exactly.
Like an entire movie.
Well, no, they explained that in the Clone Wars, because they're all the same guy.
Yeah,
you could say that. They're all the same.
They're all Jango Fett's clones.
Right, exactly. Well,
That's
and
another
the way
plot
I heard it was explained was the Clone Wars, after the Clone Wars, you didn't have just clones for the stormtroopers. They were now, conscripts, or they were hired on, they're like regular military. And then in Rogue One, they kind of explained that. And in Force Awakens really explained it with Finn, where he said he was basically kidnapped from his parents when he was a baby, and that's all he's known.
Right.
From the prequels, they were all clones. In the original trilogy, they were all like hired on or,
recruited. Yeah.
Kind of like what the Romans did with their army. And
like turning slaves into,
Yeah, or you take over this planet and now you have to give us your firstborn, that kind of thing.
Right.
And then the Force Awakens, they just started kidnapping babies. It's
right.
Like they just went full on to, let's just kidnap the babies and brainwash them from the beginning. Like, not even try and convince them. We'll just take them.
And then we get to The Last Jedi. It's interesting because Captain Phasma dies in The Last Jedi. A lot of people die off in The Last Jedi. It almost undoes a lot of what The Force Awakens does. And speaking of Finn being a glitch in that system, because maybe it's not the perfect system, and they do touch upon that in Force Awakens, where he's like, maybe we should go back to clone troopers. No, my system's pretty good. Okay, I know what I'm doing. Turns out he doesn't, because Finn is gone rogue. He's now found his own path.
And a lot more badass than he ever was as a stormtrooper.
Yeah, he's a hero. He's awesome. And how do you feel about the fact that JJ did all of the setting up for certain things, and Rian Johnson, in my opinion, made a really good movie, but not necessarily... I mean, a lot of people went into the movie wanting certain things, but they didn't get it. And for me, I just wanted to see a good movie, and I saw a good movie. A lot of people are like, I didn't get this, and this, and this. And I'm like, well, can you appreciate it for what it is?
And this is one of the things that I think Lucasfilm is trying to figure out, what Disney is trying to figure out. They're still in that mindset of mitigating losses instead of adding gains.
And they wanted to branch out on this one. They wanted to take a little bit of a risk and do something different.
Because that was the big complaint about the last movie, is it wasn't different. It was the same, even though they were making very broad strokes on all of their comments about that.
And Rogue One is basically, I mean, by definition, that movie is derivative of Episode 4. It goes right into the movie.
So with Rian Johnson, they went in another direction. They did something different. But of course, you have all of the people that had predicted things. I mean, we predicted things.
Yep.
But I think the people that are complaining the most are the ones that can't handle the fact that they're wrong.
Right.
They think that their opinion is higher than anybody else's, and therefore, if they don't do exactly what I think, then they're wrong. And so for those people, they're going to hate anything, because nothing is going to turn out the way that they think it's going to turn out, and they can't accept anything different than what's in their own head.
And to me, that's like the worst way to watch a movie.
Exactly.
The worst way to watch a movie would be like, yeah, I thought that was going to happen. Oh, yeah, I knew that was going to happen, too. And I knew that was going to happen. Awesome.
Right. Because if that was the case, they should have just kept everything canon and just did the Timothy Zahn novels. You might as well just do that. Now, I know there's a lot of people that would love that, but there's no surprise.
Yeah.
There's nothing new. It would end up being like Game of Thrones, where the people that read the books are going to be spoiling it for the people that haven't.
Yeah.
I want everybody, like the current season, the current state of Game of Thrones. Everybody is on an even playing field. Nobody knows where it's going to go because there's no book. Exactly. And that's so much more exciting than the first 4 seasons of Game of Thrones. So we're in that moment with Star Wars.
And now we're going into Solo. It's really uncharted territory now. They've done Force Awakens, reminiscent of the original. They did Rogue One, derivative of the original. They finally sort of stepped out, made the sequel to Force Awakens, The Last Jedi. Same characters from Force Awakens, so we've got that familiarity, but they're going in a different direction. And now they're just like, I mean, Solo still is derivative, but like, what are they going to do? Like, how are they going to pitch this? Heist movie? Like, are we going to like the plot? Are we going to enjoy the characters? Donald Glover's portrayal of Lando has sold me already.
But yeah, with Solo, the heist movie, is that going to be more important? The characters, like, what's the important part of Solo? I think the important part is going to be, again, filling in not plot holes this time, but filling in story that we were teased but never told. Like, we had talked on my video where we're going to see the Kessel Run. We're going to see how Han saves Chewie's life and why he owes him a life debt. How he gets the Millennium Falcon, and how him and Lando end their friendship to explain why Harrison Ford was so cautious about going to Cloud City. Like, like what happened between them? That, like, was it just the fact that he lost the game? Maybe he cheated. I don't know. But I think this movie is supposed to answer that. Because there's so many of those questions, you got to have a simple story. And what I want with these anthology movies are simple stories. I don't want the grand, space opera epicness with, like, all these Force users. I want the simple story, and I want this to be a simple heist story that just answers some of these questions, but don't get too broad. No Force users, no lightsabers. Just
Darth Vader, no Darth Vader.
No Darth Vader. I don't want I love Darth Vader.
No Death Stars.
No Death Stars. Give Vader his own movie that takes place around that time, but I don't want it to have anything to do with Solo's story.
And as far as the future, I would love to see an Obi-Wan movie, because Ewan McGregor, I think, is universally accepted, hands down, with no questions, as Obi-Wan.
And he's the best thing of the prequels.
And he's at the perfect age where he's sort of in between being, like, we could see him about 10, 15 years younger than he was in A New Hope. So I would love to see that. I know he's in talks. They've been talking about that, because there was originally supposed to be, the third anthology movie was supposed to be a Boba Fett spinoff, but then they fired Josh Trank, and now it hasn't been announced yet what they're going to do, because I think they're still hedging their bets. They're trying to find out what goes on with Solo before they make the next announcement. And again, coming back to J.J. Abrams directing Episode 9 at the end of next year, it comes out. Like, he's good at setting things up. Is he good at knocking them down, though?
I was watching Collider. Christian Harloff on there said the same thing. He's like, J.J. Abrams is great at setting up a mystery and leaving it open. Yeah. But he is not good at closing the mystery, because he's not really interested in it. He's only interested in making the mystery. Like at Lost, he created the mystery of Lost and then just kind of left, and then the showrunners had to figure out how it ended.
Yeah, it's that feeling of wonder, like, oh my god, like, what is that? And he's all like, I don't know. I don't care. Good luck, guys. Figure that one out. I'm out. Yeah. I just had to do this one.
He's gonna have
and there's a really funny video online. It's called, like, Damon Lindelof. I'll put a link to it. Explains everything, or Damon Lindelof in your office, if he were to work in your office. And it's just like this, just random things just keep happening for no reason. And like, why is it happening? He's like, it doesn't matter.
Hey, who's that eye patch guy?
It doesn't matter.
What do you mean it doesn't matter?
I don't think that matters.
If it doesn't matter, then don't introduce him.
It's not about the end, Trap. It's about the emotional journey that gets you there.
I hated the journey.
And it's just like, there's no continuity, makes no sense.
I love it.
Father.
And JJ, I don't know if he's going to be able to, because he's got Think about it. He's got every movie in the entire saga to wrap up in this 9th movie.
Yeah, JJ has had the hardest jobs. He's had to minimize the losses with The Force Awakens, and now he's got to wrap up 9 movies. I mean, I couldn't handle that kind of stress, so hats off to him.
Yeah.
As long as it's a coherent film, I'll be like, I'm surprised you pulled it off.
Yeah.
Like,
I think he might.
To that point where I'm like, if it works and it makes sense, kind of, hats off that you were able to pull it off.
I think he might do it. He seems to perform well under pressure. I mean, although Star Trek Into Darkness, when I think about it in the abstract and I think about how the movie is, I'm like, it's not really a good movie. Every time it's on, I'll watch it from start to finish. And I'm taken along for the ride. I think
it's a good movie for 2/3.
And then it turns into, it devolves.
Yeah, the last third kind of falls apart.
Yeah. And then there was a lot of sort of, I'm like, oh, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen because I've seen Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, and now I know what's going to happen.
And it's a great movie.
Yeah.
Like, you can't really remake a great movie.
No, that's a good one. So what do you want to see in the future of Lucasfilm?
Well, I don't mind that. I know a lot of people don't want Rian Johnson to have his trilogy now, but he was playing in this box that had a lot of restrictions. So I don't blame him for the Last Jedi, even though I really love the movie. All of the things that people are saying about it, I don't agree with. And I think Rian Johnson did the absolute best that possible with what he had. Yeah. So that being said, the trilogy that they're giving him, that he can do whatever he wants, he's going to have it in a different time period. He's going to have all new characters. It's not going to be connected to the Skywalker saga at all, from what I understand. I'm excited for that. I want to know what they're going to do with that. And if he has an entire trilogy arc, he will be able to put the pieces the way that he wants them to fit, with characters that we won't have any opinions on because we won't know them. I think it could be really good. I'm excited. I want them to go back to Knights of the Old Republic. I don't know if he will, but I think that time period would be really interesting.
I think so too. I think it's wide open. They can go all the way back and just completely purge anything we ever knew about Star Wars and start in the world, in the feeling, but do like a whole different Game of Thrones epic style, different factions that are fighting for power, and we eventually see who rises to power. I think that's like so wide open for, I mean, I love Game of Thrones, and you've got all the different families, all the different regions, and you've even got like the White Walkers, and that's like a whole other element. If they could incorporate all of those aspects of something like a Game of Thrones, that would be something that I'm very interested in seeing. I know Benioff, or like the two guys from Game of Thrones are actually developing. Is it a TV series they're developing, or is it another series of movies?
I think they're getting their own movies as well, but it's also something totally different. I don't think they've announced anything for the live action series yet, except that there's going to be one. And I think that's live action series that they're planning is what they want to use to launch the Disney online streaming service, you know, like what they did with the new Star Trek for CBS, All Access, you know, their streaming service thing. Even though Disney now owns Hulu, I don't know if they're going to convert Hulu into the Disney paid service or somehow wrap that all into Hulu. Are they going to absorb Hulu into this? Like, I don't know what they're going to be doing with that. You don't want to make your own paid service for Disney stuff and be competing with your own program when you own Hulu. So I think there's going to be something going on with that where they rename Hulu, or they're going to combine them in some way, and one of the big announcements for that release is going to be the live-action Star Wars, but I don't think they have anyone attached to it yet. They're still in the pre-planning.
But that's interesting. If they do that, I would like to see, because there's going to be a big void after next year when Game of Thrones is gone, and there's no best live-action TV show ever. Game of Thrones is so epic. Every episode's like a film. It's like a movie.
It is.
And if they can do that with Star Wars, I think that's the right way to go, because that's the right brand, that's the right property, that's the right universe that you can build something like that in.
There is one anthology movie I do want to see, and that's the Kevin Smith's version of the Boba Fett movie. He had written a Boba Fett movie, and he was pitching it to try and get a Boba Fett movie. I want to see that.
I would absolutely love to see that. So the future of Lucasfilm, we want to see a little bit more diversity. We want to see kind of move away from the Skywalker saga, which is, I love it, and I want to see that come to a satisfying end in Episode 9. Hopefully JJ can do that. But we'll see.
Well, I'm thinking real quick. I'm thinking Lucasfilm is going to be riding this roller coaster. They're going down the first hill where their stomach and everything is up in their throat, and that is the finishing up of these 3 movies of the Skywalker saga. Then once that's done, they'll calm down and they'll be like, okay, we can breathe now. We don't have to worry about those fans anymore. We can do our own stories and go our own way.
I think that Lucasfilm and Disney do realize that the episodic films, the saga, are the most important ones in the series. They are the ones that have to be perfect. And then they can take a little bit of risk with the anthology movies. And as they should really start to step out of this derivative world and give us some completely new characters. Because so far, we haven't gotten that yet. Other than, I guess, even Rebels brings in Vader and a lot of those folks.
Before we end, I got one question for you. You said the word derivative many times. Is that because you saw Deadpool 2 trailer and you were like, really liked that line from Domino?
Oh, that was a pretty good line, yeah. I like her haircut, too.
Every time I hear derivative, derivative, I think of her. And then, she's got the... So every time you've been saying derivative, I'm like, if he was female, it would, be Deadpool 2.
I would be in Deadpool 2. Yes! That is good. Well, thank you, Koricon, for coming on the show. This has been a very lively and spirited discussion about the future of Lucasfilm. And you guys out there, I want to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below. Definitely like and share these videos, and go over to Koricon's channels, Koricon and Koricon Nala, and thank him along with me for coming on the Aristotle Full Throttle program. Thank you very much, Koricon.
Anytime, man. I love being on your show. We are on nerd wavelength.
We are on nerd par for sure. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us today, and I will see you soon. I'm Aristotle Full Throttle, your bro in the know at the fro, and I'll see you later.
Bye.